Let's be honest. You pictured the whole scene, didn't you? The morning sun on your face as you step out onto your patio or balcony, wicker basket in hand. You envisioned plucking a perfectly sun-ripened tomato, still warm, so juicy it drips down your chin. You imagined the fragrant rush of fresh basil as you snip a few leaves for your pasta sauce, or the satisfying thump of pulling a crisp, vibrant carrot straight from the soil. It was a beautiful, Instagram-worthy dream of self-sufficiency and flavor. So you bought the cute pots, the fancy organic soil, the colorful seed packets with their perfect pictures. You planted, you watered, you waited with the genuine excitement of a kid on Christmas morning. And then, reality came crashing down. What you actually got was a botanical crime scene. A sad, wilting collection of yellowing, spotty leaves, stems so long and spindly they looked like they were desperately trying to escape their pot. Maybe you got one single, slightly deformed tomato that a brazen squirrel treated as a personal appetizer before you even knew it was ripe. You looked at this plant tragedy, this graveyard of good intentions, and came to one simple conclusion. Well, I guess I just don't have a green thumb. If that thought has ever crossed your mind, I'm about to let you in on the most liberating secret in the entire world of gardening. The green thumb is a complete and total myth. It's a convenient lie we tell ourselves to make failure feel less personal. It's an excuse that lets us off the hook. No one is born with magical, life-giving fingers. Your neighbor with the impossibly perfect petunias and the prize-winning zucchini isn't a plant wizard whispering ancient botanical secrets to them at dawn. The truth is, they've probably killed more plants than you've ever owned. The only difference is that they learned why those plants died. They simply know what not to do. Gardening isn't some innate, mystical talent. It's a skill. And just like any other skill, from baking a decent loaf of bread to learning a new instrument or riding a bike, it is learned. It's learned by understanding a few fundamental, non-negotiable rules, and more importantly, by avoiding the common pitfalls. The massive, frustrating chasm between the garden of your dreams and that sad plant cemetery on your balcony isn't a lack of cosmic energy or a flaw in your personality. It's a series of common, predictable, and entirely fixable mistakes. This video is your guide to leapfrogging years of that frustrating trial and error. We are going to expose the 15 biggest traps that ensnare almost every single beginner, turning their horticultural dreams into compost. By the end of our time together, you won't need a mythical green thumb, because you'll have something far more powerful: knowledge. And believe me, these mistakes start way earlier than you'd ever imagine. The shocking truth is that most beginner gardens are set up for failure from the very beginning, creating a blueprint for disaster before a single seed ever even touches the soil. And that foundation of failure is exactly where we're going to start. All right, so you've dodged the green thumb myth, and you're ready to get your hands dirty. Fantastic. But hold on, because the fate of your garden is often sealed before you even open a seed packet. These are the 3 foundational sins, the blueprint for disaster that trips up almost every beginner. First up is mistake number 3, the sunshine deception. You see a spot in your yard or on your balcony that gets blasted with sun at 10 a.m. and you think, perfect. Not so fast. Most fruiting plants, like tomatoes and peppers, need 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight. That means the spot you picked at 10 a.m. might be in the deep shadow of your house or a neighbor's tree by 2 p.m. You've accidentally chosen a part shade location for a sun-worshipping plant. The result is a sad, leggy plant that stretches desperately for light and gives you maybe 2 tiny, pathetic tomatoes all season. Before you plant anything, be a sun detective for a full day. Track where the light actually is and for how long. Next, mistake number 4, treating dirt as soil. This is a huge one. That compacted, clay-like or sandy stuff in your backyard, that's dirt. Soil is a living, breathing ecosystem, rich with organic matter, nutrients, and microorganisms. Shoveling backyard dirt into a pot is like trying to bake a gourmet cake using only sand and water. It suffocates the roots, holds too much or too little water, and has virtually no food. Investing in high-quality potting mix for containers or amending your garden beds with lots of compost isn't a luxury. It's the single most critical ingredient for success. Your plants don't live in your garden, they live in the soil. And finally, we have mistake number 5, the tiny pot trap. We've all done it. We buy a cute little herb from the store and put it in an equally cute tiny pot on the windowsill. A month later, it's yellow and struggling. Why? A plant's growth above ground is a direct reflection of its root system below. That tiny pot is a root prison. It restricts growth, stunts the plant, and dries out in the blink of an eye, leaving you in a constant state of watering panic. A single healthy tomato plant needs at least a 5-gallon container to thrive. Always choose a pot for the plant's final size, not its current one. So you've found the perfect sunny spot, you've created a 5-star soil hotel, and you've chosen a spacious container condo. You've laid the perfect foundation. But now comes the most delicate part of the operation, actually getting the plant into its new home without committing a whole new set of crucial errors. All right, you've dodged the blueprint for disaster. Your location is sunny, your soil is rich, and your container is the perfect size. Now comes the moment of truth, actually putting a plant in the ground. Welcome to the planting panic, where your best intentions can lead to a horticultural horror show. The first mistake is burying your seeds alive. We think deeper is safer, protecting the seed from the elements. But a seed only has a finite amount of energy, like a tiny battery pack, to push its first shoot up through the soil to find sunlight. Planting a tiny lettuce seed an inch deep is like asking a newborn to climb out of a well. It will run out of energy and die before it ever sees the sun. The golden rule: plant a seed only about twice as deep as it is wide. For dust-like seeds like carrots or basil, that means just a light sprinkle of soil on top. It's all on the seed packet. Read it. Next, we have the seedling battle royale. In your excitement, you sprinkle an entire packet of seeds into a small pot, dreaming of a lush forest. Instead, you create a brutal competition where dozens of weak seedlings fight for the same sliver of light, water, and nutrients. None of them win. You end up with a tangled mess of spindly, pathetic plants. The solution, while it feels harsh, is to thin your seedlings. Once they have a few true leaves, choose the strongest ones and snip the others at the soil line. It's not murder, it's giving the survivors a chance to thrive. Finally, there's transplant trauma. When you move a young plant from its starter cell to a bigger pot or the garden, it's easy to get impatient. You grab it by its delicate stem and yank. Rip! You just tore half of its root system, the very thing it uses to eat and drink. This sends the plant into shock, stunting its growth for weeks if it survives at all. Instead, be gentle. Squeeze the sides of the container, tip it upside down, and let gravity help ease the plant and its entire root ball out into your hand. Treat it with care. So you've now placed your plants perfectly. They have the right depth, the right spacing, and their roots are intact. They're settled in their new home. You breathe a sigh of relief and reach for the watering can, ready to give them their first drink. And right here, at this very moment, is where the single most common and deadly gardening mistake is about to happen. All right, you've perfectly placed your plants, avoided the plant battle royale, and their roots are happy. Now comes the single most common, well-intentioned act of horticultural homicide: watering. Welcome to the thirst trap, where your loving care can literally drown your garden. Beginners operate on a simple, flawed principle. Dry is bad, wet is good. So they water a little bit every single day, keeping the soil surface constantly damp. This is a catastrophic mistake. Here's why. Plant roots need oxygen just as much as they need water. When soil is constantly saturated, the tiny air pockets that roots use to breathe fill with water. The roots suffocate, stop functioning, and begin to decay. This is root rot. And here's the cruelest part of the trap. An overwatered plant looks almost identical to an underwatered one. The leaves turn yellow, and the whole plant starts to wilt. Why? Because the mushy, rotten roots can no longer absorb any water at all. Seeing this, the beginner thinks, "Oh no, it's thirsty," and adds even more water, accelerating the plant's demise. Equally damaging is the chaotic watering schedule. Forgetting for 4 days of a heat wave, then panic flooding the pot to make up for it. This feast and famine cycle sends your plants into a constant state of stress, preventing them from ever establishing a strong, resilient root system. So how do you escape the trap? Forget the schedule and use the ultimate tool, your finger. Before you water, stick your finger 1 to 2 inches deep into the soil. If it feels damp, walk away. Put the watering can down. If and only if it feels dry, is it time to water. When you do, water deeply and thoroughly until you see it run out the drainage holes, soaking the entire root zone. This encourages roots to grow down deep, making the plant stronger and far more resilient. Mastering this rhythm is fundamental, because water does more than just hydrate. It's the highway system that delivers nutrients from the soil to the rest of the plant. But even if your highway is running perfectly, it's useless if you're loading the trucks with junk food or nothing at all.
All right, you've mastered the art of not drowning your plants. But what about feeding them? This brings us to mistake number 5, where we give our veggies the equivalent of a junk food diet. The great fertilizer misunderstanding. The first mistake here is the simplest: starvation. Many beginners think that soil is just magic, that it contains an endless supply of food. But especially in pots and raised beds, your plants are like teenagers with a fridge. They will empty it, and fast. The soil's nutrients get used up, and without you replenishing them, your plants will become weak, pale, and unproductive. They can't build leaves, fruits, and roots out of thin air. But then there's the opposite, and far more common mistake: killing them with kindness. You see a plant looking a little sad, so you give it some fertilizer, then a little more, just to be sure. This is like force-feeding your plants. Most synthetic fertilizers are essentially salts, and when you use too much, you create a toxic environment in the soil that can literally pull water out of the roots, burning them and the leaves. You'll see crispy brown edges on the leaves and wonder what you did wrong. You loved it too much. The final piece of the puzzle is serving the wrong meal entirely. See those 3 numbers on a fertilizer bag, like 10, 10, 10 or 5, 105? That's NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Here's the simple version. Nitrogen, N, is for leafy green growth. Phosphorus, P, is for roots, flowers, and fruit. Potassium, K, is for overall plant health. Here's a classic example. You're growing tomatoes and you pour on a high nitrogen lawn fertilizer. You will get the most magnificent, lush, dark green tomato bush you have ever seen, with maybe 2 tiny tomatoes on it. You told the plant to make leaves, and it listened. Getting the food right makes your plant strong and resilient. But a plant under stress whether from the wrong food or too much of it, is sending out an open invitation for trouble. And that's the problem. It sends out red flags, but we're often not looking close enough to read them.
All right, you got the right soil, the right sun, and you're not drowning your plants. Fantastic. But now we enter the CSI garden unit phase. This is where many beginners fail, not because of a big disaster, but because of 1,000 tiny cuts. We're talking about mistake number 10, number 11, and number 12, all rolled into one: ignoring the red flags. Your plants are talking to you, constantly. A yellowing leaf, a weird spot, a tiny hole, these are all messages. The first blunder is simply not showing up to read them. You water and walk away, thinking your job is done. The pro move is to take 60 seconds, just 1 minute every day, to be a detective. Flip over a few leaves. Look closely at the new growth. That's where you'll spot the first signs of trouble, like a tiny cluster of aphids. This leads directly to the next error: misidentifying the good guys. You see a bug and immediately reach for the spray. Hold on! That ladybug? She's not there to hurt your tomatoes. She's there for an all-you-can-eat aphid buffet. She is your free organic pest control. Mistaking a beneficial insect for a pest and killing it is like firing your own bodyguard right before a fight breaks out. Learn to tell the difference between a hoverfly larva, which devours pests, and a destructive caterpillar. A quick search online can save your garden's allies. And that brings us to the final, fatal flaw in this detective story: procrastination. You spot a few tiny whiteflies. You think, it's not a big deal. I'll handle it this weekend. By the time the weekend rolls around, that small colony has exploded into a full-blown invasion, weakening your plant and covering it in sticky honeydew. A problem that could have been solved by a quick spray of soapy water now requires a full-scale intervention. When it comes to pests and disease, a stitch in time literally saves your vine. Becoming a keen observer is a game changer. It puts you back in control and prevents small issues from becoming catastrophes. But even if you master this and become the Sherlock Holmes of your backyard, there's one final emotional mistake that can crush your spirit and make you want to give up entirely long before you ever taste that first homegrown tomato. All right, we've navigated the treacherous territory of sunlight, soil, water, and even the tiny six-legged invaders that want to eat your lunch. We've covered the tactical, hands-on mistakes that can trip you up. But now we've arrived at the final, and honestly, the single biggest dream killer of them all. This isn't a mistake you make with a shovel or a watering can. It's a mistake you make right here, in your head. I'm talking about the deadly combination of impatience and the expectation of perfection. You've seen the time lapses, the picture-perfect Instagram harvests, and you expect your garden to operate on a Netflix binge-watch schedule, instant gratification. But nature works on a different clock. Here's a classic example. You plant a carrot seed. You water it perfectly. Days turn into a week, then 2, nothing. You start to doubt yourself. You poke at the soil. Maybe you even dig one up to see if anything is happening, destroying the fragile sprout in the process. Or your tomato plant finally sets one tiny green fruit, and you check it 3 times a day, as if your intense stare will magically turn it red. When a single leaf turns yellow, you feel a wave of panic, thinking, "This is it! I'm a failure! I can't even keep one plant alive!" This mindset is the ultimate harvest heartbreak, because it robs you of all the joy in the process. It frames every small setback, not as a lesson, but as a final verdict on your abilities. The truth is, your first garden is not about producing a flawless, grocery store-worthy bounty. Your first garden is your classroom. So the most important shift you can make is to change your definition of success. A dead seedling isn't a failure. It's a data point. It's a tuition payment to the university of your backyard.
Did it get too much water? Not enough sun. You just learned something invaluable for next time. Celebrate the tiny victories. The first sprout that breaks the soil? That's a win. The first flower you see? Pop the champagne. Harvesting a single, slightly crooked cucumber? You are a legend. That is a trophy you grew with your own 2 hands. Because when you finally master the technical skills we've talked about, and you pair them with patience and a curious mind, that's when you stop fighting your garden and start dancing with it.